Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is brighter than I thought, actually. Sorry, give me a little bit of time to adjust. My name is Victoria Tang-Owen. I'm a founder and creative director of a multidisciplinary creative agency, 3030 Creative, and Victoria Tang Studio, which is my collaborative platform where I work with luxury brands. And I'm also the director of arts, culture, and heritage for one of the first Chinese luxury brands, Shanghai Tang, which was founded by my father, Sir David Tang, 30 years ago. So that's a bit of my background. I'm very excited here to be sitting here with Nadine. And I'm sure every one of you have had some great insights into all the conversations from the panel. They always say, leave the best to last, and here we are.
Thank you. I'd like to believe that.
Are you ready?
I'm glad to see people are awake and ready. I thought the last one was actually the best slot because I was like, most people would probably be having coffee and slowly, gradually get in here.
We promise we'll make this fun. So let's get started. Nadine, you have your own your name brand for 9 years, you said? And over that period of time, the definition of luxury has changed. And I'd love to start by hearing a little bit more about your fine jewellery origin story and what motivated you into entering the market.
Okay, so just a bit of a background, as I'm assuming most people don't know my brand. A little bit of a background is I went to Stanford, where most people do startups that are valuable and way better than fine jewelry, so it was a bit of a shock when I came into this space. So after Stanford, I went to Boston Consulting Group, where I worked with the commercial department, and then I spent 2 years in a rotational program with Hermes, which was extremely informative with regards to marketing, quiet luxury, craftsmanship, etc. But since I was a kid, I really loved drawing and designing, but I came from a family where we really fostered intellectual curiosity, and so my career path was kind of going along that trajectory. I never thought I would be a jewelry designer. It took me 4 years since I started the brand to actually start to say that I was a jewelry designer because I felt like such an outsider in the industry. But what I've realized is being an outsider in the industry has actually become my superpower because I see things differently. And so basically how it happened is I didn't get the job I wanted after spending 2 years at Hermes in Paris, although I love the brand and it's still my #1 brand. The way that culturally things work out there is you get the job based on your age. It's a very ageist company, and that wasn't very aligned with the way I was raised in Stanford and just in general. So I started looking at, okay, I'm 25 years old. I've just done all this theoretical, like consulting with Hermes. Like I want to learn something tangible, and I want to learn something I'm passionate about. Obviously, when I said that to my family, they were not very enthusiastic, but I basically started ground up. So I started actually in Beirut because I'm Brazilian Lebanese descent. I actually never lived in Lebanon, and I wanted to get closer to the craftsmanship locally and use my international platform to kind of elevate them. So that's kind of where I started. Today, most of my manufacturing is in Italy, but I'm still a one-woman show. I started, I would say 9 years ago, learning how to, learning the industry and kind of paving my own way. And here I am today. So thanks, Robb Report, for having me, and thanks everyone for being here and listening.
Do we have some of your work that will be shown on the screen later?
I think they're showing it. I don't know.
Okay.
But wait, yeah.
Because I would love to just put, I don't know if the cameras can zoom, but you have to understand.
So I think here we'll highlight this. This is, I'm wearing one. Yeah. So this is probably my most iconic piece. So the first collection I created was just me being inspired by everyday objects that I saw on the streets in New York. And one of my mottos is making the ordinary extraordinary. And so here you have a stackable ring, which is 7 different rings that you stack together to create a cheeseburger. And within 6 months, I received an award for innovation with regards to this, because it was the first time someone had sold a concept of multiple pieces and also had the audacity to make something like that in 18 karat gold. And actually, one of the first collaborations I did was with McDonald's. I think everyone here is familiar with McDonald's. Maybe raise your hand if you're familiar with McDonald's. Yeah, I would say most people here. Raise your hand if you were familiar with my brand prior to this conversation. Exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is it was pretty impressive for McDonald's to reach out to me and say, hey, listen, you're known as the Burger Queen, and we want to do a prize for the Big Mac. So here you see the advertisement that they used their platform and their marketing spend to basically push this piece that we co-created called the Bling Mac, which actually the winner was one of my followers, so it was really exciting. And that was probably the first collaboration I ever did, and yeah.
Now we
my
get
hands.
context, okay? Yeah. So here comes my next question, because I think to a lot of people, you might be considered a challenger brand, right, in the fine jewelry industry. And what do you think about that?
So I think to my manufacturers and anyone I work with, they must think I'm a challenge, just based on my personality and my vision of how I want things done. But I think, first of all, obviously, I find that actually very flattering to be called a challenger. It works very well in my professional field. It doesn't work so well in my personal life. But basically, I think that when I entered the market, all I heard was no. Like, you don't have a background in the industry, you don't have connections in the industry, you went to Stanford, like go back to consulting. Like, there was a lot of like naysayers, let's say. And so it took a lot of inner strength to be like, you know what, like, let me prove them. I have nothing to lose and everything to prove here. And from that moment on, my motto was literally, don't think outside the box, think like there is no box. And you'll see that logic is how I approach every single decision making, whether it's with retailers, whether it's with collaborations, et cetera. And honestly, that's helped me like embrace relationships that people wouldn't expect in a quite conventional space and industry, right? So if you think about it, jewelry at the time that I entered 10 years ago, there wasn't social media. It was more stones. It was more, predictable, immaculate, perfect image, et cetera. There wasn't a background of like, how did we build this brand? Look at the imperfections behind it, et cetera. And so going into that industry and really just doing things a bit differently, and I think it echoed well with the audience, and it was the right time to do it, was just very positive.
Yeah. And you mentioned retail. So I know that you kept a tight control over your retail relationships. And could you share with us a bit of that and your point of sales? But is that priority based on maintaining exclusive to your products?
So the retail space since I started over the past 10 years has shifted drastically, right? We talked about COVID literally making it such that people felt more comfortable purchasing things online. There's been a huge shift. Initially, when I started, the way to have a brand and create a name for yourself is actually be with the right retailers, be with the right showcases, give people that stability, because, Bergdorf Goodman is super specific, Colette is super specific. Like, if you're in all of these places, then I feel as a customer willing to take the risk of, investing in your brand. But now I think it's a bit different because people are much more comfortable purchasing online. I think that there is more appetite for things that are different. I think there's more appetite for supporting new creatives and their vision. And so my approach is very simple. Like, I don't believe retailers are what's going to get me out there. I'm slow and steady wins the race, right? And so I want to gradually grow at a pace that makes sense for my brand. But I also want to be able to give people, customized experiences, because all my pieces are customizable. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about jewelry, which isn't a necessity. It's an emotional piece, right? And I want it to hold its story and hold its value. And I think that that's a bit lost in translation when you have a middleman like a retailer. So I've worked with Dover Street Market, Colette, Bergdorf. I've worked with great stores, but I will work with them on a temporary, in a temporary way. So it'll be to launch something, or it'll be in a collaborative nature.
Yep. And I think that's also quite true. And there's so many similarities with the way we work as well. And I'm just realizing this. And as you speak. Because I think now, as an independent brand, you don't need the validation of retail because there is social media and there are other platforms for you to outreach to your consumer directly. And as you said, after COVID, people are willing to spend a lot more online. Before, it was anything over $1,000 US, you're just not sure if it's fake, and you have all these skeptical thoughts about it. But now I think more and more people are willing to just buy online, and that value is a lot higher. So in terms of engaging with your customer, you talk about experiences and how do you understand their desires, and how do you balance your thought process of creating, being the founder and also the creative director to kind of drive what products, the design process. Like, do you listen to your consumers and say what they want, or you always try to just think no box and kind of find the collaborators that you work with and then hear what they have to say in order to design products that they want? Sorry, that was five questions in one.
I have the memory of a fish, so I was like, I need to address this. Okay, so high level, let me just say the way that I work is very much, I get inspired by something, and then there's a production, behind it where I test out the idea, and, there's a process around there. I would say that I'm not consulting in the sense that I don't analyze the market, observe the trends, do the assessment, predict my sales. Like, I don't believe in that. I think for me, it's more of, okay, this is something that's inspirational. I like a crayon. We all come across crayons, right? Like, it's something that speaks to all of us. We can customize it. We can put our name. Hey, Crayola, you want to work together on this? No? Okay, well, I'm going to stay here until you say yes. And then we're going to create a collaboration together. So, like, it's, I think, very much in my own bubble. But I do listen to my clients in the sense that every piece is customizable. So people speak to me and tell me how they want to customize something, and I learn something about their wants and needs through that experience. And I think that that's probably the only kind of feedback that influences my new collections and my relationship with my clients, yeah.
And so do you see, so these are the crayons. Do you see that when you have an iconic product, you would then in 10 years' time want to keep creating that iconic piece but diversify it? Because from a design standpoint, that's very interesting, right? When you know something sells well, do you make more of it, right? Or do you evolve?
So, I mean, my goal personally and professionally is to continue to evolve. I think that if I had investors in my company, which I don't, I think that they would be, I think they would be pushing me to be like, okay, your best seller is your burger. You're the burger girl. Like, keep selling burgers. Do a white gold burger, a pink gold burger, yellow gold burger, and let's just keep stuffing burgers out there. And I think that in that you lose your creativity. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't want to open to investors or even collaborators is because I don't want someone to control that part of it, right? I think creativity is extremely important, and it's not finite. And I think that you might be able to revisit. So like my 10-year anniversary is coming up, right? And what I want to allude to in a little bit of a wink is like some of my iconic pieces, and how, although the concept is pretty clear and it's iconic, we can play with it in a different way. So stay tuned.
I told you one of my favorite pieces was the 5-carat ring. So 5-carat ring is actually 5 diamond carats that is made up into a ring. And I love that and it speaks to me, because I do branding, so it speaks to me exactly what your brand essence was, that there was a sense of humor, that luxury doesn't have to be quiet, right? Or over the top. But it could have this elegance still, but with a bit of fun and underlying meaning, which I love about your brand.
Thank you.
Pillars.
Thank you.
And so Now, let's talk about transformative shifts in the values and expression around luxury, right? Because this is what we're here for. What values do you believe are becoming increasingly important to the luxury consumers?
I'd say authenticity. I think you can tell when a brand is trying to like follow a trend that's not aligned to their, DNA. So I think more and more, people are willing to spend, people are curious, people are willing to experience, but it has to be authentic to the brand. It has to really listen to the consumer in its own way. Like I always say, my pieces are strong. You might love it or you might hate it, but you don't walk out indifferent, right? And so I think it's important to know your customer. I've had few talks where someone will raise their hand and say, hey, can you do that in silver? Can you make it more affordable? And I'm like, I hear you. I appreciate your comment. I understand where it's coming from, but my production is 18 karat gold and it will always be 18 karat gold. I'm not going to change what is the DNA of my brand, even in a time like COVID where a lot of jewelry designers started to do like gold plated or 9 carats or cheaper, materials. So I think that being authentic, having a vision, and honestly being steadfast in approaching that vision and targeting it is really key.
Give me one more. I mean, authenticity is, everyone says authenticity. We've heard a lot on the panel today about authenticity, but can I just squeeze one more out of you?
One more thing that's important?
One more thing that is important. In terms of your view for the luxury consumers?
I think as a brand, what's important?
Yes.
Yeah, I think for example, I have to say, I think it's really important for big brands to stay relevant, and I think that the way to stay relevant is also to use their platforms to support new creatives. And for example, a brand that does that pretty well is Audemars Piguet. I know that they've done a lot of innovation collaborations, but they do support young creatives, and I think that this kind of like giving and this positive cycle is really key. And at least for me, that's kind of the trend or the positive dynamic I'd like to see.
Thank you. I was hoping for that because I think a lot of these luxury brands are now, and there is a pattern to working with artisans, to working with smaller, not big names, but really focusing on the storytelling and the authenticity of the collaboration. It's not something that is forced, but it's brand aligned, right? And so here comes, let's move on to multi-sensory experience in luxury. Luxury retail is evolving beyond pure push for product, and brands are offering a range of experience for their loyal and potential customers. It's difficult to be everywhere all at once. As a brand, how do you prioritize your communication and engagement to create emotional resonance with customers in order to build a meaningful relationship? Because I'm sure you have old customers, right? But you also have new customers. But how do you engage the experience with them as a journey so that they would stay with you? Does that make sense? Is it a tricky question? I guess my point is if you don't have a retail store, right?
How do I keep them curious?
Well, you talked about Hermes, right? You go into the store, you have people opening, giving you a bag and gloves, in white gloves. You get the aesthetics of the interior. You get to experience the products. You get to experience the service. You go to a hotel, you get the service as well. You get the scent, you get the smell. So when you don't have a retail footprint, I guess my question is, how do you then engage with the experience other than just getting a product onto their hands? Because I think a lot of what we've heard this afternoon, this morning, was quite experiential, right? We have travel, we have yachts, we have cars. And when it comes to fine jewelry, which is much more delicate, where do you see that where do you see that kind of experience that you can give to your customers?
So currently I don't give that experience to my customers, as I'm like purely on social media and I don't have a retail footprint.
Do you think it's important though?
100%. And I think that's like a future step I want to take, which is to create experiences for curious future clients, current clients, et cetera, where, you know, the values of the brand are being, you know, infused in the experience. So, you know, I'm a nerd. I love to learn stuff every day. So for example, you know, I went to Crayola's factory and I saw the manufacturing, and this is something that's really private that they usually don't show. That's something that I would love to bring like some of my clients to come and see, because it's really cool, and it also, you see the values of Crayola throughout the whole building, and those values are aligned with my values, and it's kind of like a synergistic conversation starter. But I'm not at that scale yet, but I think that's the direction I want to go. I think from an experience perspective, like what I try to do in the best of my capabilities is have my client feel heard and respect the timelines or what they're looking for and really guide them. I think that it's very rare to be able to be in touch with the designer themselves. And I'm behind my Instagram, so you guys DM me, I'm gonna be answering. If you guys send an email to info@Nadine Ghosn, I will be answering. I know everyone who's purchased, how they purchase, where they ship to, you know, like, so that's kind of my experience, is like, I'll see people, I really wanna value those relationships, because I think everyone who purchases from me is taking a risk, and it says something about them, right? They're like, instead of going to the Van Cleefs, the Cartiers, where there's all these retailers all over the place and all this, you know, coverage on Tiffany and on every ad board, you know, they're taking the risk to come to a young creative and choosing to put their money on that and wearing that piece. So that's kind of the way I see things.
And you just gave me a thought there, because I think luxury doesn't have to be big, right? Luxury can be small as well. So
Pocket-sized.
the smaller the better. So future trends, right? So, sorry, so future, I mean, that's, you talked about value, because experience is about the value. It's not always it's not always a price tag to it, right? Experience is also creating memories. So, you know, when I buy a piece of jewelry, the value for me is being able to tell a story. And I think every one of your pieces has that component, and it's a conversational piece. So for cultural trends, future cultural trends and challenges, what cultural trends do you foresee shaping the luxury market in the coming years, especially in the fine jewelry sector?
What cultural trends?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about authenticity, right? We talked about your background, your culture, and how do you engage with shaping that landscape of your little landscape and your little sector, that you can still be the point of difference and trying to do something that is always different from someone else. I mean, that is the goal, right? To always be something in the fine jewelry industry, to kind of do something that is unexpected. Because I think that is a part of your brand key DNA, right? So future,
if you say so. I think it's hard because I'm in my own little bubble and I kind of function on my, you know, but like, and I try not to see what other people are doing in order not to be influenced. And so for me, I would say what I would love to exhibit in the future is just stay attuned to things of curiosity. So if you look at my brand, a lot of the stuff that I am inspired by are, you know, everyday pieces or things that are extremely nostalgic. So that's kind of where I focus my energy. And I think that as long as I'm creatively in that space, that's where I see the future of my brand from a cultural perspective, because it's attuned to me. What I see with other brands is just, you know, to continue being creative. My issue is I think that a lot of these older brands don't take the risk, right? And so younger brands are the ones that are actually taking the risk. They just stay true to their best sellers and lines, but don't actually, creatively, introspectively express themselves as well as they could with all the resources they have. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best I can do.
No, it does. It does, because it will bring me to the next question. I think for the future of your brand specifically, just let's be creative here. From jewelry, what would be a kind of next step for you to work, or what would your dream be to work on?
So I have two next steps. I think the first one is I'm a huge watch aficionado. I love watches, and I work closely with a few watch brands. And so one of my next steps is definitely to do something in the watch space. So if anyone works for a watch company here, specifically Patek or AP, feel free to send a message. And then the other thing is, like, one of the things that I've envisioned, and I'm not going to give up, I'm very relentless on this, is I would love to work with Hermès again in a different capacity, which is, I think that, in case they want a creative jewelry designer to come in-house, then that's something that I would love to do, because I love the playfulness and the ethos within that brand, and there's so much heritage there. And I feel like if they allow me to play, we can really take it to the next level. So that's kind of two things that are on my wish list, mood board, however you want to say. But in the meantime, my goal is to be so loud that they can't not pay attention to me.
I think you're doing a great job on that.
I think that's their cue.
I know. I got it.
Thank
One
you,
more
guys.
question. Wait. There is one I need to tick off, and it is what is your definition of luxury?
Tax here looking at us.
I know, I'll give you 1 minute.
Yeah, okay, quick. It says, please wrap up. So 1 minute. No. My definition of luxury, I mean, people have said, times, friends, whatever. I was told not to say petting my dog. I was like, I do not have a dog. With how much I travel, I cannot afford to keep a living dog. But for me, the biggest luxury is freedom. And I think freedom is having the choice to make decisions, to travel, to meet people, to do what you love, all of these things. That to me is the biggest luxury. And I think people forget how fortunate we are to be able to express ourselves, to be able to travel, to be able to, learn things. I remember once I was sitting next to someone on a plane, and this was during COVID. I was going to Uganda. I don't know why this came up, but I feel very fortunate because I'm well-educated, and education was very key, but I was near a woman who started panicking the moment the air hostess gave her a white paper, where basically it was a white paper you have to fill out before you arrive in the country. And I realized by sitting next to her that she was panicking because she couldn't read. And that was just one of those weird moments in my life where I said, wow, how privileged am I to be able to come to a country and not be scared or intimidated by an airport or by someone giving me, a file. And, with that privilege, I want to make sure that I leave a mark. And so freedom is really key to me, and that's the biggest luxury.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Nadine. And thank you, everybody.